Everybody, welcome to Two Out the First. It's June 28th, 2024. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks for being here. This is not a recorded version of a live show. We're trying to do this Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Didn't get to do a show Wednesday. I was out at Lansdowne Resort in Northern Virginia, having a great time out there. I've lived in this area, the DMV, my entire life. I've lived in Maryland my entire life, and had never been out there and had an awesome time. We'll talk about that on a 19th Hole Golf Show podcast. But today we've got plenty to talk about from the last couple of days. And as we're recording this, it's 9:30 in the morning on a Friday. My daughter is going to have a musical performance today, so I'm very excited about that for her. But before we get into the father-daughter pride thing, we've got some golf stuff to talk about. Plenty stuff to talk about. So let's kick it off with something that I just saw, and it kind of had flashbacks to June 6th in terms of the number of people who texted this to me. But there were a guy named Frank Bensel Jr. made back-to-back holes in one on consecutive holes today at the U.S. Senior Open. Good buddy of mine, Joe Burkhart from Tri-State Golfer up in the Philadelphia area. He is a Rhode Island native and was a very accomplished golfer back in the day. He beat Brad Faxon, like the Rhode Island State Junior. It's like one of the most stinging defeats of Brad Faxon's life, according to Brad Faxon. And Joe texted me, "Hey, you got to see this." And it's the scorecard of this guy, Frank Bensel Jr., who's from Jupiter, Florida, and he qualified for the U.S. Senior Open. They're playing at Newport Country Club up in Rhode Island. And he made back-to-back holes in one today. On back-to-back holes. So at Newport Country Club, on the front side, the pars go 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, and then the rest fours. So Bensel made a par on the first hole, bogey on the second hole, which was 321 yards by, mind you. Par on the third hole, and then from 184, jars it. Then a hole later from 203, jars it. And then, on top of all that, if that's not insane enough, he then makes 3 consecutive bogeys on the par fours to get back to even for the day. That is unbelievable stuff. I mean, the odds of making a hole in one on any one individual par 3 is about like 13,000 to 1. And that depends on, that number moves a little bit. It's probably a little bit shorter if you're a full-time professional golfer, more like 1 in 7,000 or 10,000 kind of thing. And then if you're a worse golfer, it's more like 1 in 17,000. I've seen that number bandied about over the years. But for someone of like Frank Bensel Jr.'s skill level, I think 1 in 13,000 is fair. And you've got to treat them like they're independent events, right? Because having an ace on the prior hole has no bearing on having an ace on the next hole. You might, it shouldn't. I mean, you feel good about yourself, obviously. You just made a hole in one. But I would argue the odds of you making hole in one on the very next hole or the very next par 3, because there aren't many courses that back-to-back threes, would be way worse because you've got all the adrenaline pumping. You've done it. You're kind of on cloud 9, and then you got to keep playing golf, and then you've got to hit another one tight on a par 3, by the way, at a U.S. Senior Open where golf course is not easy, and then you jar it. So being kind, just calling them 2 separate, totally independent events at 13,000 to 1, that's a 1 in 169 million occurrence. That is unfathomable. That's lottery ticket level stuff that happened to Frank Bensel Jr. today. Good for him. Also, equally hilarious that golf would be so cruel to then lead to 3 consecutive bogeys, get back to even par of the day. Oh, man. Talk about all-time PBFUs. I guess you call it PAFUs. Post-ace F-ups. That's amazing. But congratulations to Frank Bensel Jr. on doing something I've never heard of. I mean, I've heard of 2 aces in a round. Brian Harmon did that, I believe, about 10 years ago, maybe, on the PGA Tour in a stop in New Jersey. Had a couple of aces, but obviously the opportunity to do it in consecutive holes, not just consecutive par 3s, in consecutive holes, it's very, very slim. Most golf courses aren't designed that way. And here he is. It's something I've never heard of and probably will never hear of again. So, heard it first here. If you haven't heard about it today, that's crazy. I mean, I was just talking about this the other day. I was playing golf at Lansdowne, and someone, the pro that we played with, Nick, we got to a par 3, and he was talking about how he had made a couple holes in one on the hole, and he said, I have like 5 or 6 holes in one or something like that, and I've never had a hole in one, and I've explained I've almost aced a par 4. I've done it every which way to miss a hole in one on all kinds of par 3s, clanging off the stick, roll over the cup, go in the cup and come out. I mean, I've done it all, and not gone in. And then we played that hole, and I almost charted again. But Frank Bensel, man, that's crazy. I mean, that's amazing. So there's that to start your morning. Now let's talk about some stuff that happened the last couple of days. First, let's talk about LIV Golf. They had some bad news come their way. One of the distribution partners that they have for their Friday rounds, right? The ones that aren't on the CW TV networks. That one of their partners for that was called caffeine.tv. And they announced this partnership, I believe, in February. I don't remember exactly when at this point. I didn't go back and find that date. But they announced this partnership. We're going to put our Friday rounds on caffeine.tv. And they have 60 million users per month and like 4 million users per day. And the viewership is incredible. And look at all of the views on our content. And then they shut down. And they shut down while I was on the golf course at Lansdowne on Wednesday. I was playing somewhere on the front 9. I think we were moving to the back 9 at that point when they made the announcement. Emailed it because I had started streaming this show on Caffeine, just to see what it would do, and I partnered up with them, and got some views. I mean, we're just starting the show doing live versions. I wasn't expecting much, just starting to kind of build a base for it, right? But then we got this email to the partners, I guess. We're shutting down. We're not profitable. We're gonna think about next steps. Maybe we come back. Maybe we don't. But we're shut down. Goodbye. And there wasn't even like any time to be like, hey, if you want to get your videos, you can get them or anything like that. Just we're out. It's gone. It's over. And obviously the natural reaction to that when I tweeted out that news as soon as I got a hold of it was, oh, well, how in the world are they not profitable after the zillions of people they have coming to them after the claims that they made? And I didn't talk about this publicly at the time when I started finding out about Caffeine as a platform because I wasn't certain of it. But I went and looked at the time and was like, hey, saying to myself, I don't know this platform. I've never heard of it. How can you say there's 60 million people checking it out? It's one of those things where I'm also of the age now where I realize there's a lot of stuff that's probably incredibly popular that I don't know about and do not care about. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm skeptical, right? But I also realize that like things like Twitch streaming exist, and I don't go on Twitch, but there are people who make unfathomable amounts of money streaming on Twitch, whether it's video games or just like chatting with people or streaming live events, all those things make unbelievable amounts of money. So I've kind of have to accept, okay, you got to do your research before you just kind of come out and say something about this. And I went and did my research, and I looked at their vertical around golf, and they had LIV videos from non-live events, like highlights and things like that, previously published to this platform before they announced the agreement. And those videos had not many views relative to what they would like to claim. 7,000, 10,000, 30,000, which those aren't horrible numbers, right? I mean, they're not great, but they're not horrible. And then all of a sudden, once they announced the agreement, like the next slate of videos all had like 7 to 10 times that number of views, like 500,000, 900,000, 550,000. You're like, there's no way that happened. There's absolutely no chance that happened. So I get the sense they were maybe juicing it quite a bit for some of their partners, just based on a couple of things. it's unfortunate for LIV because it's another thing that kind of blows up in their face, and it's not their fault. They probably got the eyes pulled over, the wool pulled over their eyes as well. Or maybe they did. They just knew it, and they just thought they would try to help out somebody. I don't know the relationships there, and I'm not going to pretend to know. Maybe someone at Caffeine knew the folks at LIV, or vice versa, and they're trying to help one another out, see if they can't help Caffeine stay afloat. I mean, there are always those kinds of conversations. Yeah, there was all this kind of stuff happening the last day or so about Bronny James and nepotism and crooked business, and like, oh God, it's horrible that the Lakers picked Bronny and blah blah. There's so much nepotism in sports and basketball, and I mean, every sport there's nepotism. Oh my gosh, every facet of life there's nepotism, and that's something I don't think someone like me, who has grown up very much a middle class person, was prepared to understand until I got into the business world, until I got out of college, and started to understand how, the winks and nods and favors and networking, and that's not just family stuff. That's just who you know. And that has a pretty significant bearing on what you can accomplish and how quickly you can accomplish it. You may be a best in class. You may be have a great business. You may be an incredible employee or innovative person or whatever. But you will get to the front of the line so much faster if you know the right person. If they're willing to do you that favor, or you share blood or DNA, and that could be one of those situations here of, hey, LIV knows somebody over Caffeine, or vice versa. Hey, we'll help you out. See if we can't help each other out. No risk there involved, right? Because LIV is already distributing their stuff through YouTube. YouTube's a way bigger platform. Everyone knows that. And then you kind of contrast that with what Caffeine was saying they were having as their monthly users. And you know that's just patently false compared to YouTube. So that's that kind of whole thing. But unfortunate for LIV that happens, because then that's another thing that kind of flies in their face and go, ah. I mean, literally all the replies. I mean, even people who are neutral to LIV that I've interacted with in the past are like, LOL, who cares? And to that end, there was some conversation or interest in that thread, and then also from me naturally about what were the ratings for last weekend between the Travelers and LIV Nashville, because you had the U.S. Open champion Bryson DeChambeau playing in Nashville. They did sell a good number of tickets, or at least got a good number of people in the gate. I have no idea how much they papered or did discounts. I mean, they do a lot of that stuff, right? I mean, they discount very heavily a lot of tickets pretty often, just to get people in the door, or to get them to go see a concert during, whatever. Go to the par 3 hole, the party hole. There's all kinds of those, So when they say, hey, we got a record number of people, that doesn't mean they paid full price. It also means the same thing for the U.S. Open or the PGA Tour events. All that stuff happens. So you got to take it for what it is. But I figured, okay, well, there's a good number of people there. Nashville's an underserved professional golf town, even though they had the Korn Ferry Tour finals. It's not quite the same as the PGA Tour or LIV. So they had a good turnout. And I was wondering, hey, does that translate to TV ratings? Because people now know the U.S. Open champion plays on LIV. And I've not heard a peep. And I've tried to research this as best I can. Unfortunately, what has happened is a couple of folks that I've relied on for getting access to this data from Nielsen, they've stopped getting access to it. So there's a great account called Sports TV Ratings that has long posted, for years, ratings for any kind of sporting event, not just golf. Name your sport. Basketball, baseball, all of them, right? Network and cable, and just trying to kind of paint a picture of viewership. And the guy who does that account has lost access to Nielsen ratings. So that's meant it's basically impossible for him to give you an idea of what the viewership is like. And obviously that creates a problem in trying to give you an idea. And there you have it, right? The ratings for the PGA Tour event, the Travelers, that event went up basically 7% over last year when Keegan Bradley won. So that's not bad, right? I mean, you got people to watch, and it finished early because they were trying to get ahead of some weather, and that worked out to get it in. But they finished, like 4:45 in the afternoon instead of the usual 6:30. So people were kind of surprised about that. So I think they would have gotten a better number had it finished toward the traditional time, because frankly, golf viewers are viewers of habit. Like, it's on from 3 to 6 or 4 to 7, more or less, in the summertime. So people know to tune in starting at 6, right? But it wasn't that way yesterday, or last week, I should say. So pretty decent number there, all things considered, for the playoff between Tom Kim and Scotty Scheffler, and then the Extinction Rebellion melee on the 18th, the 72nd hole, all that stuff. So there you go. So there's that. I since I can't get a hold of that rating for LIV, I am assuming it was bad, or at least not good. And the reason I assume that is, again, goes back to skepticism, right? If something good happens, you stand up, puff your chest out, bang on it, and yell from the mountaintop, right? I mean, that's just how it works in this world. And that they didn't do that leads you to believe that whatever number it was, and it could have been significant for them, or it could have been bad, it could have been kind of just standard fare. It wasn't enough to put out a press release and go, "This is amazing, we're great, here's what we're doing." So take that for what it is. But I think that's the situation there. So there's all that. And then we've got the Rocket Mortgage Classic going on. Nick Beans had a pretty decent first day. I mean, I thought he was going to potentially shoot closer to 80. He winds up having a pretty decent day. I mean, he's down at the bottom of the leaderboard, but not dead last. This is an relatively easy golf course, and for people who've played it before, and being world-class professional golfers used to this kind of setup, they're going to score much better. But he still beat a bunch of guys, so congratulations to him. I think that's a total success. He's not DFL. It's not horrible. I mean, it's just, hey, it's really hard to do this. Even players who are world-class college players who come out and play golf, they have bad days. And Nick, in his literally first day on the PGA Tour, and first ever round of the PGA Tour, I think represented himself very well. And one guy I thought of as he was kind of struggling a little bit toward the very tail end of the round, I think he got to 3 over at one point. I thought about Nick Dunlap. I was like, hey, he won as an amateur, turned pro, and has had very much up and down since. Like, lots of times where he's just down near the bottom of the leaderboard, just +6, +7, +5, bad days. But then yesterday, and he's had some more days like this recently, he's had a good round. It's hard for him to string them together, but he's had a good round. And it seems like he's starting to figure out how to play this tour. The next step for him is being able to do it more consistently from the bell on Thursday to the final bell on Sunday. And he might be figuring it out. He might be getting somewhere here. So just a guy to look out for. Akshay Bhatia played great. He's playing great right now. He's going to be an interesting figure going into the weekend. We'll see what Dunlap does today. Ricky Fowler was a couple back after day one. He would be a very interesting back-to-back winner of this event. I think a lot of people are pulling for him. Min Woo Lee's out there. Cam Young's out there after having shot 59 last week. It's an interesting board. It's not a perfect one, but it's an interesting one. And so hopefully there'll be people interested in it this weekend. See what they watch. But we also have the Dow Championship on the LPGA, which is their one and only team event. I've noticed this recently about the LPGA, and really just like the last couple of weeks, and I really appreciate it, is that they are willing to let the players be themselves. The PGA Tour works extremely hard behind the scenes, and then in front of the camera, and then after the fact, to try to portray their players as upstanding people who have never said a cuss word, who never make a snide remark, who don't say a joke you wouldn't say in front of a certain company. And the LPGA has kind of leaned into, hey, let's show our players' personalities. And there were a couple really funny videos. One, a news conference of Georgia Hall and Charlie Hall. And they're playing as a team this week. And they decided to call themselves Rose and Thorn. And they call themselves that because Georgia is more the nice person, and Charlie's like the thorn, kind of, so to speak. And that was from one of their mutual good friends. And they just them kind of talking about it and then kind of playing off of each other was great. Charlie Hall is a great news conference. Georgia Hall is actually too. She's, when you let her go, and that's what's happening. She's great. I mean, she's hilarious. And then they had a video of, who was it? Bronte Law and Mel Reed, and they're playing this week. And they're talking about, and they're both known, if you watch the LPGAs, as players who kind of have potty mouths, if you want to call it that. But they cuss a lot and they kind of talk shit a lot, and they're hilarious, right? I mean, there's people you want to play golf with. They're fun, and they're talking to each other and like swearing that they didn't cuss today and they didn't get picked up by the camera. And then Mel Reed goes, "Yeah, we wanted to call ourselves, for team name, we wanted to call ourselves Brits with no tits, but the LPGA wouldn't let us do it." But the funny thing is, the LPGA recorded that video, put captions up of it, and put it up on their socials. That's great. That is awesome. I'm all in on that. I want every person who cares about golf, I think, wants to not only see great golf, but they want to understand the people who are playing it. And part of understanding the people who play it is letting them be themselves, letting them be who they are, say what they feel. And yeah, there's a certain stretch of things you probably shouldn't say, but I don't think that even comes close to anything like that. Let the players be who they are, show off who they are, let us get to know them. We'll come watch them. And I think that's something that we've picked up on, or maybe the LPGA has picked up on, with everything happening in women's college basketball and now transferring over into the WNBA with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Cameron Brink. Unfortunately, she tore her ACLs out for the year. Bardosa, Leah Bott, I mean, just all these players that have just, in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, started to really transform how people think about the league, because not only are they very talented players, but they also have realized they could be, if they're allowed to be themselves, talk crap, talk shit, be their personality, and not treat it as though, I feel like women's sports have been treated for too long, typically by dudes who have been in charge of, oh, well, the ladies have to act proper and they have to be upstanding and, look like they're desirable, or whatever the version of desirable is, what, all that crap. Like, no, that's not what people want. People want genuine, entertaining personalities. And you need good guys, you need bad guys, you need shit talkers, you need hero types, you need do-gooders, you need bad people, heels, so to speak, that don't mind saying something that will rile people up. That's what you need. That's how you get people to pay attention. Look at the ratings for the WNBA this year. Caitlin Clark is a big reason why. Caitlin Clark got more than 1 million people to watch a game on a channel called Ion. Ion, for crying out loud. That's like one of those channels you scroll when like you're in your hotel room and like there's nothing on. What the hell is this? And you turn it on. People are watching that in 7-figure numbers to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball. If you look at non-Caitlin Clark games, they're not the same ratings, right? But they're still basically up 65 to 70% over last year. It is unreal what happens when you let great talent be themselves. The LPGA, I think, is getting that. Kudos to them for doing that. Long may it continue. Hopefully the PGA Tour gets the hint and continues to do more of that as well. And not like in the full swing way, which, I mean, full swing is very enjoyable, but on the daily, not just like a series that is packaged up after the year is over. Let it happen every day. I promise you, more people will be interested in golf. I promise. I think Bryson DeChambeau has shown that the last couple of weeks. Even if you think it's a total phony act, and it could well be, he has realized that being a showman gets people interested in him. And other golfers are realizing that, know that, and they just need the opportunity to be able to put that out there. With the platforms these tours have, let's do it. All in on it. I think it's great. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the show and for the week. Thank you so much for listening, or whether you've been watching the live shows. I appreciate that too. We'll be back on Monday with a live show, Tuesday with a live show. I don't think we'll be able to do it on Wednesday. I'm going to be traveling to Tennessee, so there may not be much around the Independence Day couple of days there. We'll try to do a couple recorded shows, audio only, in Tennessee, but also no promises there because, to be honest with you, I'm going to my in-laws' house and we pretty much just drink from sun up to sundown and well past sundown. And then we have a pig roast for the 4th of July. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening that may make me distracted or borderline incoherent. So let's just not do that. But if the shows pop up in your feed, hey, cool. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Email me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com. I'm on Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Ryan Ballingy. Facebook and YouTube, Ryan Ballingy Golf, and Golf News Net's on all of those services at the handle, Golf News Net. Thank you so much for listening or watching, and we will talk to you next week. Enjoy the golf this weekend.